It's pretty much common knowledge that Minato is the fastest shinobi within the Naruto verse and doesn't really get surpassed until people start accessing 6 paths chakra or receive that type of amp. But besides that, he's pretty much the pinnacle of speed that can be reached in the series and one of the smartest in the series as well. But what is it like to go up against Minato with all his abilities and powers as well as healing ability? Today we're going to be breaking down that in a type of analyzing way of all his fights from the point of view of the enemy. Before I get into the video, I would like to give a shout out to the reason why I got this idea for 6 doing his what it's like to fight Maki and what is it like to fight Yuta before it got taken down. So I thought it would really be cool to do it on my channel as well. Please, before we get started, it would mean a lot if you could drop a like and subscribe on the channel as well as hype it up. With that being said, let's get into it. So within the lens of the Hidden Clouds shinobi, they are tasked to go and retrieve the 9-tailed Jinchuriki that recently just got transferred to the Hidden Leaf village. And it's pretty much a smooth operation. You end up sneaking into the village uninterrupted and be able to take the Jinchuriki of the 9-tails. But somehow, some way, the presumably childlike person comes in and being able to track you down, but because you did not realize that the person that you captured was leaving trails of hair. And we see that this small child was able to single-handedly take down, I'm assuming, multiple Jonin candidates or multiple Jonin ninja from the Hidden Cloud by himself without not one use of any jutsu, but just pure taijutsu and overall stealth and power. And from this point on, the person that was being captured, being Kushina, looks at this kid as a sense of aberration, a sense of person of being that they should always look up to, that being Minato Namikaze as a kid. And obviously this wasn't the most seen or most longest fight that we ever got from Minato, but I feel like this lays the groundwork of just who Minato is in itself, because after this, everybody in the series pretty much looks at Minato within this light, that being Naruto, his own son, that being Kakashi Hatake as well, one of the more known people within the verse, even being the third Raikage, because even this very moment had a long-lasting effect on the Cloud Village to the point where even Raikage would bring it up way later when they have their encounter. But right now, this is just a small tip of the POV of Minato, because obviously we don't even get into him using the Fire Raijin in this encounter. This is just basically Academy to gaining level Minato. And one thing that I want to point out, this would be coming off of the heels of the Second Great Ninja War, where people like the legendary Sannin or even people like the White Fang began to amass their name to become something of greatness, and yet a little kid that wasn't even them was able to stop the Jonin that were sent to capture Kushina. And that also makes it even more scary, given that you could tell that the generation that's finna come up is finna be something else. Finally, time passes and we enter into the Great Ninja War, and Minato is now a preteen around the ages of 15, with Kushina also becoming this age as well. And obviously we don't see too many fights within this manga, but we see one that pretty much holds a big standard when it comes to Minato's power and character, and also how much influence that he has on characters as well. And we pan to Minato training as usual, as it seems within the contents of the manga that he trains daily within sealing techniques and jutsus as well, with even Jiraiya in the actual series saying that he had a really good affinity for jutsu. But we're gonna look at somebody's point of view that's completely different from Minato's or Kushina's, the 9-tails, as the 9-tail has been telling Kushina multiple times over to let go of anybody that may love her, because it's pretty much impossible, because the 9-tail has never been loved by any of his hosts. So he tells the Jinchuriki that will be impossible for you. And as Minato pretty much tells Kushina this fact that he would always be here for her pretty much, and that he loves her and doesn't want to lose her, the 9-tails unleashes something within Kushina, allowing Minato to get hit by the tail of the 9-tails. And usually in the 9-tails point of view, this would completely knock anyone out the fight, given that his 9-tail chakra is poisonous, and we see this in Naruto Shippuden, but it doesn't. Minato actually ends up coming up and putting a seal on the power of the 9-tails, which stuns the 9-tails Kurama, with him actually nodding to this being just like the first Hokage's ability or the first Hokage sealing, or being at least on the same caliber as well. So now the 9-tail is actually taken aback about who this is, and even asks who is this, and we end up getting a whole monologue of Kushina and Minato. Then we pan to a flashback of Kushina finally remembering what the wife of the first Hokage was saying about how it would be good for her to find love while you're in this world, and while being a Jinchuriki, allowing her to release her anti-mantium Uzumaki chains to be able to subdue the 9-tails. 9-tails seeing resistance from not only Minato but also Kushina, his Jinchuriki, asking Minato to literally give me my Jinchuriki. He funnels even more chakra within to Kushina, which allows her to break off into her V2, impaling Minato, and surely the 9-tails will thank think he's out for the count. But no, the man appears in the mental space of Kushina and the Nine Tails with the Rasengan, the jutsu he was just practicing and could barely do a couple pages prior, and ends up slamming this into a beast bomb. Albeit the beast bomb wasn't fully transformed or fully into its completely chakra signature or state that it usually bees in, it still would be over any tail beast bomb that we see from any Jinchuriki until the war arc, and Minato was able to slam his Rasengan into it, causing a collision. But while doing this, he was telling that he will never give up or never leave Kushina, and he loves her. And this is pretty much the stigma of what we see with Minato when it comes to how much he loves the people that are within his life, and just how that powers his abilities from literally being able to go from being impaled and getting slapped by chakra that is poison to going into their mental space, weakening him, and still being able to slam his Rasengan into one of the strongest beasts within the series. And one of the things that I want to say here is that this also goes to show off just how strong Minato is without the flying Raijin. I feel like throughout the series, once we see Minato, we see a lot of flying Raijin, and given that this panel or this manga came out after the series, it would make sense that throughout the whole series we think that the flying Raijin is just all Minato is good at. This manga specifically shows that Minato was really good for jutsu, especially his sealing jutsu, obviously with it being on the caliber of the first Hokage, as well as how quick he can master jutsu with him being able to create the Rasengan, something that took Naruto immense amount of work and the use of the clone technique to complete in a week, as well as even Boruto taking 3 days plus to learn it and actually get it to being a good sized Rasengan, albeit he did add a change of chakra nature to it. But again, Minato being a genius, being able to learn it in 1 day and instantly go to fighting again one of the strongest beasts within the series is a really good thing to say about his character and about his strength without the flying Raijin. Now we fast forward again, and now Minato is leading his own team and is now finally off the team of Jiraiya, and we're into the third Great Ninja War and the ladder of it. And one thing that we can see from Minato is now he's become so immensely powerful and so dangerous that he has amassed the name the Yellow Flash of the Leaf, and now we're getting to his power of the flying Raijin being the thing that drives his overall push to end the war and become the fourth Hokage. But one thing that we want to see is the perspective of Jonin, and one of the most beautiful encounters that we see from a Jonin within the series is the Jonin that we first see Minato run into on the mention of the Kunai bridge arc. And something that I like to see from this is how even though the Jonin knew that this was the Yellow Flash of the Leaf, he still kind of tested the waters with seeing if he could still beat them, but should have just took the run on site order literally and got out of there. But in his lens, he sees this as something that he could do, having multiple Chara clones placed all around the battlefield, but they're all discovered by Minato. But we see that Kid Kakashi wants to try his jutsu, and the Jonin seeing this thing, this will be an easy target, pretty much saying that he didn't expect him to rush all the way in. But one thing I want to pick up here from Minato, and something that he doesn't get credit for, given again that he only uses the flying Raijin from this point on, with this coupled with his Rasengan and his healing techniques. We don't see other kind of showings of his taijutsu or anything like that. But one thing I want to show is his kunai placement. While Kakashi was charging with the Chidori, he was able to battle away all the kunai that the enemy was throwing at him and successfully back him up pretty much effortlessly. And you might be saying, of course he's good with kunai, given that he throws his kunai with the flying Raijin, but to be able to do that while Kakashi was moving at this speed with the Chidori, given that the speed of the Chidori amping his base speed that already should be stronger than most Genin and most Chunin that we saw in the series around Kakashi's age, is really crazy to show. But the Jonin sees this and sees that Kakashi is rushing toward one of the shadow clones, and Kakashi falls for the bait with the Jonin going for the kill on Kakashi. But then Minato swoops in and saves Kakashi's life, and the Jonin is even surprised on how Minato moved. And one thing that this points out is that even though that they heard the rumors of Minato, they didn't know specifically what jutsu he was using. They were just told to flee on sight if you saw Minato, the person with the yellow hair that looks like the Yellow Flash of the Leaf. But one thing that is also cool to see is that this will be the first time ever that we saw his FGT seals get placed on somebody and he teleports right behind them. And in the ninja's mind, this was nothing but an instant, literally looking at Minato, seeing his backpack drop, and now Minato's behind him with the kunai to his throat. And one of the things here is that we see how merciless Minato is. Even though in the series he's kind of seen as this kind-hearted, you know, golden child, he's pretty merciless and slit the dude's throat like it's nothing, even though we know it's war. But no batting an eye, no laughing, no smiling, no jokes, just nothing but the kill. And it was really cool to see from Minato that right now, even though he's trying to do the same thing that Naruto was doing and his master, that's something that he has to put on the back burner, because in this war he's fighting to protect everything that he loves. Moving along, we finally see Minato ends up arriving to the main battle within the whole point of this mission, trying to distract the enemy while Kakashi, Obito, and Rin sneak across to sabotage the enemy's plans of getting the shipment across the bridge. And from the lens of the Jonin that was there were only 4 Jonin that were still on the side of the Leaf Village, and there were at least bare minimum 50 stone shinobi that were on the other side. And from the lens of the Jonin, they were pretty much seeing this as unwinnable, it's over. But Minato arrives, and even still one of the Jonins are saying that it's even impossible for Minato to handle this, but when the Jonin tells them to completely shut up because they're going to be able to see the yellow flash in action, showing that nobody has really seen what he does, only a select few, but not all the bare minimum Jonin in the village are people. They just know that when Minato's on the battlefield, you just need to run, and Minato tells him to just slyly place his kunai at the enemy and he'll handle the rest. And obviously this isn't a fight, but it just goes to show in the baselines of a regular Jonin, they showed the difference and the ability of somebody that just gets to that position and the actual character that's going to surpass it and go into the Hokage status. For example, somebody like Kakashi, who is seen as the strongest Jonin in the village, he's obviously over somebody that is like a Jonin but not a good one, or somebody that isn't really seen as a Jonin that can handle big threats, like Ebisu, for example, who trains people like Kamahomaru and helped train Naruto for a bit, but isn't on the level of Kakashi. Now moving into the lens of a Kage, or at least a future Kage, this encounter that the Raikage Minato had a long-lasting effect on the Raikage, even to the point where after this battle he considered Minato the fastest until he died, saying this to Naruto that he's the fastest shinobi since the 4th Hokage died. But something that about this battle that is really good to see here is that these are 2 people that rely on speed, or at least use speed in the basis of their abilities, and it still could match Minato's speed and even his regular base speed, because we saw that he had time to react to the Raikage rushing him and then use his flying Raijin to get out of the way. But from the lens of the Raikage, we see that this is the same man that stopped the capture of the Nine Tails recapture all those years ago, and he tells him that he is going to take care of him, trying to fully see how the Yellow Flash gets down in battle. And one of the things that we instantly see is that the Yellow Flash was able to move out of the way of his fastest punch and then have enough time to instantly teleport behind the Raikage with his kunai ready to jab him in the back, but his brother saves him. After this, Minato ends up doing something that we've never seen up until this point, and actually takes a liking to Killer Bee as well as Raikage, and actually stops to talk and have a conversation with them. But in doing so, the Raikage starts pinpointing what he can do to stop Minato from using his ability, given that he's now recognized that Minato is faster than him. He has to now predict where Minato might try to end up to attack him. Once Minato ends up going again for the assault, he prepares to get ready for Minato to use his kunai ability with his flying Raijin, but then appears behind his brother, and this takes Raikage aback because obviously nobody is aware of the tagging of Minato's ability until it happens. That's why it's called the Seal of Death in the data books. Minato then ends up again calling B his pretty much new name, Killer B, and Killer B actually also takes this on to the rest of his life off of just this encounter with Minato, as well as the Raikage seeing this to the point to make Minato in his eyes a fine shinobi who nobody was better than while he was alive. And this was a short little encounter, and it was kind of just to hype up Naruto, letting us know that Naruto is now approaching that league of being around his father. It was still a good encounter to see that these are 2 people of speed that were able to combat each other, but we just know that Minato is now definitively the fastest, because even later in the series, Raikage still considered himself the fastest, but got completely blown past by this point. Now, one of the last fights that we see from Minato before he gets reanimated, and the pretty much pinnacle of his character, is fight against Obito. And this one was a small encounter with not many words, one of the best showcases of just how crazy Minato is. But today we're going to be looking at this from the eyes of Obito, and presumably Madara Uchiha in Minato's point of view. So the bracket time for this is probably going to be from Madara's point of view, just because Minato thinks he's fighting Madara. So it's kind of cool and it's kind of funny, so I'm just put that as the bracket time if you see it on the video. But with that being said, we go into this battle with Minato being stuck with a lot of tasks to do. Minato has to save his wife as well as his newborn son. Minato then has to teleport up to the Hokage monument and save it from a tail beast bomb. But then now Obito in his mind space takes his time to go and attack Minato at this very moment, seeing a blind spot. Then out of nowhere, this seemingly too fast of a character turns around and pivots and stops you from being able to suck him into the time space. But even though Minato still ends up getting out of the time space and teleports to a nearby area, Obito then follows, pretty much analyzing the ability of Minato, knowing who Minato is and how his ability at least works in some grand scheme of things, but not the technical abilities like the Sealing of Death, given that he didn't know that it never disappears. But even still though, Minato pretty much analyzes what Obito was thinking. He's looking for a decisive blow and can't drag out a fight because of the Nine Tails rampaging on and how powerful it is to control the Nine Tails as well as fight somebody on the fourth Hokage's caliber. And Minato pretty much kind of attests to this with him doing all things that he can against him, trying to get him into the time space, but it's still not working, and even tries to grab Minato with some change, and Minato gets out of this. Obito comes down to what Minato was thinking as well, that this will just come down to one blow, who will be able to touch each other first on a head-on collision. Then we see that Minato and Obito begin to rush each other, with Obito reaching for his hand saying I won, giving off that he has outsped Minato. But outside of his knowledge, Minato can up his flying Raijin to a level 2, teleporting to the kunai on top of Obito. And then Minato slams a Rasengan into his back, searing off his arm that was attached by White Zetsu. And then after this, places the FGT seal on Obito that never disappears for the rest of his life. And then after this, teleports another kunai into Obito's gut. This pretty much makes Obito retreat, given that it's over and he can't win this battle. And if Minato didn't have to worry about the Nine Tails, he would have pretty much lost, because Minato would have been able to pursue him and be able to battle Obito and capture him in, but he didn't. But Obito, after this, pretty much we never saw Obito come close to being this down bad in a battle, except for like heavy prep time from Conan. Other than that, Obito has always never been touched pretty much for the majority of the series. It didn't have any problems in battle, but Minato was the only one who was able to push him this far. And obviously Obito was young, but you have to understand a lot of things about the battle. Not only was Minato holding a seal on Kushina for however long childbirth bees, for sometimes 10 to 12 to even 15 hours all night, sometimes could even pass into the next day, and Minato was holding a seal to make sure that the Nine Tails doesn't run out of Kushina. Not only that, had to teleport a Tail Beast Bone with his flying Raijin tag as well, and only that, did multiple teleporting with Kushina and Naruto multiple times. And even though Obito knew that this would psych Minato up, Minato still came into the battle level-headed, was able to analyze his ability down to a T, showing just how smart Minato is in battle. And not that he only relies on the flying Raijin, but he's one of the best users with it, being able to apply it to his knowledge and his uses of all the jutsu that he does have. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This was a really fun video to make. It's kind of like a tester video. If you guys like this video as well, I got tons of other characters that I want to do, and even some other characters from different verses. Maybe if you guys really like this video, drop a comment down below who you guys want to see. With that being said, please, for me, like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love you all. Stay safe. We out.